tough luck out there. Did you feel as that final lap was coming together that it wasn't going to be quite enough, and did you be fighting it all the way through Q1?
So say it again?
Did you feel like on that final lap, as it was coming together, it wasn't going to be quite enough to get through, and had you been fighting the car all the way through Q1 just to try and get something out of it?
I think most of the lap was good enough to get through. I just didn't finish it.
And how different did the car feel after the rebuild and the great job the team did, obviously, this morning?
The team did a mega job. They deserve better for sure.
Finishing, I'm afraid. Every time, I'm so sorry.
Lewis Hamilton just suffered a brutal crash in Abu Dhabi. And it's not just a damaged car, it's a full-blown Ferrari disaster. Structural damage, aero loss, and zero setup data left the team completely blind going into qualifying. The result? Hamilton was knocked out in Q1, starting P16 in his final race, with Ferrari a shocking end to a painful season. Subscribe now, because what just happened could be the final chapter in one of F1's most dramatic career moves. Saturday began with high hopes for Lewis Hamilton in Abu Dhabi. It was his final Grand Prix weekend with Ferrari, and the team had brought a late aero upgrade hoping to close the gap in qualifying. But all of that vanished in an instant during FP3. Hamilton lost control under braking into turn 14, and the rear of the car snapped violently. He slid into the barriers, hard destroying the front wing under tray and heavily damaging the rear suspension. The red flag was immediate, and so was the concern inside the garage. What appeared to be a routine driver error quickly turned into a logistical nightmare. The impact had not only broken carbon components, but disrupted key aerodynamic surfaces. The SF-25 chassis is notoriously sensitive to airflow balance, and losing both the front wing and floor meant that the car's dynamic setup profile was effectively erased. Ferrari engineers had only 2 hours to replace parts, run recalibrations, and attempt to align the rebuilt car with what had been learned over 2 full days of practice. The bigger problem? Ferrari had been running split test programs throughout Friday, with Hamilton and Leclerc trialing different downforce levels. This meant that Hamilton's crash data was critical to finalizing the qualifying setup, but with the car destroyed, all of that information was lost. The engineers were left blind. They reverted to a base configuration that hadn't been optimized for Abu Dhabi's specific traction and temperature conditions. No driver wants to go into qualifying with a setup they haven't touched on track, but Hamilton had no choice. As qualifying began, the signs of trouble were immediate. Hamilton's SF-25 was visibly unstable through low-speed corners and lacked grip on exit. Even with new soft tires, he struggled to keep the rear in check and had to correct mid-corner on both hot laps in Q1. Radio communications were short and tense. He told the team the car felt loose everywhere, and at one point asked, "Are we even in the window?" The answer was clearly no. He finished the session in 16th, eliminated before Q2. This was the third consecutive Q1 exit for Hamilton, but unlike in Brazil and Las Vegas, this one carried a heavier weight. It's the final qualifying of his Ferrari chapter. For a driver of his caliber and history, bowing out with a bottom 5 grid position stings deeply. Inside the Ferrari garage, team members were visibly frustrated not at the driver, but at the string of compounding issues that led to this moment. From the crash to the rushed rebuild, every decision felt like a gamble forced by time and circumstance. Leclerc, running the team's alternate setup, made it comfortably into Q3 and will start in the top 5. That contrast only sharpened the feeling that Hamilton had never been in contention, not due to pace, but due to chaos. Without proper aero data, without chassis balance, and without even a clean prep lap, Hamilton's car never had a fair shot. The margin between success and failure in Formula One is razor thin, and Ferrari fell on the wrong side of it at the worst possible moment. This final qualifying performance wasn't just a setback, it was symbolic. Hamilton came to Ferrari seeking a legacy-defining challenge, but 2025 has delivered more pain than podiums. Saturday in Abu Dhabi summed it all up. A great driver in a broken car, fighting a battle he never had the tools to win. And now, with one race left, he faces the final chapter of this era, starting from 16th on the grid, buried behind midfield traffic and with no margin left for error. On paper, Hamilton's Q1 elimination looks like a straightforward underperformance, but the reality is far more technical. The crash in FP3 compromised every variable that matters in qualifying, from mechanical grip to aero efficiency. After the rebuild, Ferrari was forced to swap out not only the front wing, but also the floor assembly, rear diffuser, and sections of the suspension setup. That meant Hamilton entered qualifying with a car that had never turned a single lap in that configuration. The balance was unknown, the ride height was untested, and the aero platform was completely off-sync. Telemetry comparisons between Hamilton and Leclerc in Q1 painted a grim picture. Through turns 5, 6, and 7, where rotation and traction are most critical, Hamilton was carrying visibly less mid-corner speed and showed multiple rear corrections. His steering trace spiked as he fought to keep the car straight under throttle, a classic sign of rear instability caused by floor misalignment or inconsistent downforce. Leclerc, on the other hand, was smooth and consistent in the same corners, proving that the base setup Ferrari had prepared was workable, just not for the rebuilt car on Hamilton's side. Sector times confirmed the struggle. In Sector 1, Hamilton lost just under 1/10 to the Q1 cutoff, which was manageable. But in Sector 2, the flowing mid-speed section, he dropped nearly 3/10 due to under-rotation and lack of grip on corner exits. Even on the straights, he couldn't compensate as the car's drag profile had increased with the emergency floor configuration. Speed trap data showed Hamilton 6 km/h down compared to the top 5. In a car that should have been fighting for Q3, he was losing time in every critical area. The tire phase made matters worse. With no opportunity to simulate qualifying fuel loads or run push laps after the FP3 crash, Hamilton went into Q1 on a blind prep. His first run saw the soft tires fall outside the optimal temperature window, and his second attempt, while cleaner, still showed elevated surface temps due to sliding. This thermal degradation caused rear grip loss, particularly in the final sector, where his car stepped out through turn 19 and ruined any chance of a time recovery. Another telling detail was the braking trace. In previous sessions, Hamilton had been gaining time under braking, especially in turn 6. But in Q1, the telemetry showed him lifting earlier and braking more conservatively. That's not a matter of choice, it's usually a response to a lack of rear stability and unpredictable load transfer. Without confidence in the floor's behavior, Hamilton couldn't lean on the car the way he normally does. His onboard radio confirmed this, describing the car as completely disconnected, imbalance, and on edge under pressure. What's even more concerning is how far off he was compared to the midfield. Drivers like Bottas, Ocon, and Hülkenberg, in slower machinery, outqualified Hamilton by up to 2/10. It wasn't because they suddenly found a performance edge, it's because Hamilton's Ferrari wasn't delivering what it was built to deliver. Between the mechanical repairs and missing setup alignment, the car effectively became a patchwork version of its original self. In Formula One, that is enough to destroy an entire session. This kind of Q1 exit doesn't just affect grid position, it alters strategy for the entire race. Starting 16th means Hamilton will be locked into a defensive race plan with very few windows for clean air or undercut opportunities. On a track like Yas Marina, where overtaking is limited and tire degradation is severe, he'll be stuck fighting the DRS trains instead of chasing points. The crash in FP3 didn't just end a practice, it ended any realistic hope of a strong result in his final race for Ferrari. The biggest invisible casualty of Hamilton's crash wasn't the front wing or the suspension, it was the floor. In today's ground effect era, the floor is the most aerodynamically sensitive part of a Formula One car. It is responsible for generating over 60% of total downforce, and even slight warping or structural misalignment can completely disrupt airflow under the car. When Hamilton hit the barriers in FP3, the impact twisted the lower plank and damaged the diffuser strake's two elements critical to the SF25's low-speed stability and high-speed efficiency. Ferrari had no choice but to fit a replacement floor for qualifying, but here's the problem. Floors are not one-size-fits-all. Each one is fine-tuned to match the unique chassis characteristics of a car and optimized through practice data. Without time to align the replacement with ride height, rake angle, and suspension preload, Hamilton's rebuilt car lacked the precision needed to extract grip. The floor's aerodynamic seal responsible for maintaining low-pressure airflow under the chassis was broken. As a result, rear grip fell off dramatically, especially under load. The SF25 is already known to have a narrow operational window in terms of balance. It demands exact aero balance front to rear and depends on a very specific yaw sensitivity setting. These values are usually refined over multiple practice sessions, but Hamilton's car skipped that entire calibration phase. Ferrari had to revert to a neutral baseline setup without knowing if the car would understeer, oversteer, or oscillate between both. The technical team could not risk pushing the limits of floor flexibility or rake setup, without testing the structural behavior on track. Further complications came from the suspension rebuild. The rear toe link and pushrod were replaced in a rush, meaning mechanical alignment was done without a full session of corner weighting or damper tuning. This severely compromises how the tires behave under acceleration and braking. The bounce and pitch in Hamilton's car during Q1, especially into Turn 5, suggested that the damping wasn't dialed in to match the track surface. That led to a car that wasn't just hard to drive, but fundamentally unbalanced across all three sectors. Ferrari's engineers were also missing key telemetry data due to the crash. The FP3 session would have provided final confirmations on tire degradation curves, temperature behavior in long runs, and fine-tuning for brake migration points. With that data gone, Ferrari couldn't lock an ideal brake balance or differential settings for qualifying. These elements affect how early a driver can get back on throttle, how sharply the car rotates under braking, and how stable the platform is during weight transfer. Hamilton had to guess while his rivals fine-tuned every detail. Onboard footage from Q1 revealed classic signs of aero disconnect. The front wing responded correctly in high-speed corners, but the rear was unpredictable, snapping on power and causing Hamilton to feather the throttle mid-exit. This is a textbook symptom of disrupted aero balance, a car that turns in well but can't maintain grip once lateral load builds. The lost rear stability forces the driver to be cautious everywhere, killing lap time in sectors that demand total confidence. And at this level, hesitation means elimination. Finally, all of this points to a fundamental problem Ferrari couldn't solve in time: correlation loss. The floor that Ferrari installed for Hamilton wasn't correlated with the data models or wind tunnel simulations. That means all the aero maps used to predict ride height, grip levels, and car behavior were suddenly invalid. The engineers had no predictive model to guide setup changes. This forced them into damage limitation mode, choosing safety and predictability over outright speed. It sealed Hamilton's fate before Q1 had even started.